Welcome to the Commercial Real Estate Academy podcast, the podcast dedicated to simplifying the commercial real estate industry for the masses. Each week, we sit down with industry experts to dissect the many facets of commercial real estate and extract valuable lessons you can apply to your business. Whether you're a new or seasoned business owner or investor, the Commercial Real Estate Academy podcast will be your go-to resource for all your commercial real estate needs. Now, here are your hosts, Raphael Collazo and Jeff Walston.
Welcome to the Commercial Real Estate Academy podcast. I'm your host, Raphael Collazo, here with my co-host, Jeff Walston. How's it going, my friend?
I'm great. Business is finally being completed because we're at the end of the year. But my January is looking very full. I'm hoping that it'll keep progressing through 2023. But other than that, trying to stay warm. I'm glad that we got through our cold spell over here in Kentucky. But what about you, Raphael? How's it going over there?
Same, man. Same. It's business is going great. You know, I've got a lot of activity going into 2023, so I'm really excited. I think 2023 is going to be a great year for the business community as a whole. Even though there's a lot of sentiment right now in the economy saying, "Oh, what's going to happen in 2023?" I really think that for the business owners that I'm talking to and investors I'm talking to, they're still going forward. So excited to see how it all transpires. But today in our episode, Jeff and I had spoken offline about trying to get, just kind of discuss a variety of different things that are happening in the world pertaining to commercial real estate and really the business community and how it could potentially affect commercial real estate going forward. And so, periodically what we'll go ahead and do is we'll pull some articles. Jeff and I had convened and, he came up with a couple of articles and I came up with a couple of articles. So we're going to go ahead and review some of those and just go back and forth and share our thoughts on some of the things that are happening in the broader economy. So one of the first articles that, Jeff actually has focused a lot of the articles that he's pulled up on manufacturing. So this particular article that, for the guys, those of you guys listening in podcast format, it's called Made in America. These are some of the companies bringing manufacturing back to the U.S. Jeff, do you kind of want to give us a brief overview of, what the gist of the article is?
So on this particular article, I wanted to point out to the people that are listening, this one was back in July of this year, 2022, that this was written. So it's just explaining how the U.S. is, major companies are not trying to rely over on production and operations and stuff overseas as much. So they're actually taking the initiative and bringing back their companies here to at least North America, which I'm all about. And just, the Russia and Ukraine conflicts, now China and Taiwan has even accelerated this reshoring to North America, to the US. And so I'm grateful for it. I think it's a brilliant idea. I wish it happened even faster because I know when this started in actually 2010, but it's actually finally, we got some traction here, that everything's coming back from like appliances and electronics, particularly semiconductors. I know Intel is investing quite a bit of money into the Phoenix area, and they're due to open up two new factories. Or just one large factory around the Phoenix area in 2024, which I think that's the very smart way to move, especially in semiconductor arena. And then even steel is actually moving back here locally. There's a company called Nucor, which is in Brandenburg, Kentucky. It's not too far. It's like less than an hour away from Louisville, Kentucky. And they're growing their plant, which I can't wait, because since I'm in commercial construction, steel has always been one that's lagging in shipping and manufacturing and so on and so forth. So I hope that's really going to help the region. But other than that, I mean, it's going back to discussing on the Trump administration that started the trade war, yada, 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 with the tariffs and such, which is kind of forcing the hands of these manufacturers to really look into this. But I'm hoping that it's not just the tariffs, that they're realizing that is more than that, particularly that the supply chain would actually help. And moving it back home, we don't really have to worry about the subsequent issues of geopolitical issues across, the pond there per se, anywhere in the Eastern Hemisphere. So I'm hoping that this moves even quicker. I know it takes a lot of money and time, but I'm grateful for this initiative.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much a brief overview of what this is, some of my opinions on it. But what about you, Raphael? What do you think?
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And I think, like you had mentioned, this is something that has been, trickling slowly. And with the pandemic, it was very evident that what was happening in the broader landscape is that the access to certain major components for these manufacturers is domestically, for example, like Intel and other technology companies, they weren't able to gain access to semiconductors, or they weren't able to gain access to some of the raw materials or the components to be able to finalize the production of certain materials. And so they're realizing that if something like that were to occur again, that could cause a lot of issues. And not only that, you had mentioned something related to, geopolitical issues. If you're reliant on, a country to produce a particular material, and for some reason there's disruption based on what's been happening in the world from a political standpoint, that also could be a risk factor for business. And so, this article kind of goes to show that, businesses are starting to think more globally and long term, and understanding that, if this similar situation were to occur again, how could that potentially impact our business? And it seems like a lot of businesses are starting to say, okay, well, just to control the process better, and we believe this will be better in the long run, we need to start reshoring some of these more specific jobs and these more specific functions that could provide the raw materials and the components that we need to in order to, produce whatever materials or whatever product we need to in the United States. And so I'm really excited about this trend as well. I think it's going to be great for the really North America as a whole. And then obviously, more local to us, the Nucor project is going to be great for a variety of reasons. One being, like you had mentioned, in the construction space, you'll have access to, these materials probably more readily, and hopefully that helps with, costs as well. So,
Yeah, I mean, I think that it will help. I know labor was a big, was the issue, labor cost. And that's why a lot of companies moved overseas. But there might be a slight increase in the cost of material here, which is not going to help the inflation. But I see it. I think as Americans as a whole, we just need to realize that, hey, we are creating jobs here in the U.S. And we're getting it from our neighbors essentially. And that's, $1 or $2 more per item, or percentage points per item is not going to hurt to buy essentially locally, and locally meaning the U.S., North America. And
for sure.
to me, I'm all for that. I don't mind paying a little more to know that I'm taking care of my neighbors next door. And
yeah,
and that's the one across the world who I've, may never even meet, or doesn't have a lot of the same values. So that's just my opinion on it.
Understandably. And, I think the world's also getting a lot more technical and complex, in that a lot of these manufacturing plants, it's no longer like the supply chains of old where, the Ford Motor Company kind of designed the supply line where people were staying there, and your whole job was to twist this little knob, and, essentially, it was very quote unquote low skill labor. Nowadays, like with these manufacturing plants and these facilities, they're becoming a lot more complex. And so the jobs that they create a lot of times are high paying jobs. They require more refined skill sets. So, these are good jobs that are coming, and they're benefiting the community as a whole. Like, I would imagine, I know with, that wasn't mentioned here per se, but, we have a big, Ford invested a significant amount of money in Glendale, which is just outside of Louisville, to bring a battery plant. And all the batteries that are produced at that particular location are going to help with the future of, Ford's, SUV products. And so I would imagine a lot of those jobs that are produced are going to be high skilled jobs, and they're going to get paid a very good wage. And that's going to benefit the economy significantly in that area. So
I want to point out too that majority of the other automobile manufacturers are actually have announced, is particularly in this article too, that they're going to invest in manufacturers in the battery cell productions over here in the US. So, or at least in North America, which again, it's getting closer to home. And I think geopolitical issues will no longer be an issue because now it's close to home. It's our neighbors. We could quickly probably work those out since they are next door type deal. So I'm grateful for it. And I'm ready to see how it's gonna affect the economy. I believe it's gonna help actually, even though it might increase a couple things here and there, but I think it'll actually help us overall and in the long run for sure.
And that'll benefit the commercial real estate community too, because commercial real estate follows economic growth. So if jobs come to an area, there's going to be demand for space. So you're going to have developers coming in to develop shopping centers and retail centers.
Oh yeah, it's definitely going to have that trickle effect, right?
Absolutely.
As soon as you get that, yeah.
So it's really good to see, and I'm hopeful, obviously that this will be a benefit to the broader economy over the next coming years. So, yeah, this is a great article. I really appreciate you sharing this one. What we'll go ahead and do now is we'll go to the next article. So Jeff and I both have a couple articles that we shared. So we'll go to one of the articles that I sent over. This one is actually from a website called Retail Dive, and it as part of this particular article, they're tracking retail sales from the U.S. Commerce Department, and they're just essentially saying, okay, how are sales year over year, performing based on what's happening in the economy. And so overall, retail is still extremely strong. The year over year growth is still, I think, 4.5% compared to retail sales last year. And this is based on November. Each month they track and they compare year over year growth for these different months. There's a lot of businesses that have benefited from what's been happening in the economy over time. The ones that aren't so much are electronics. So, you think of the, TV sales, cameras, that sort of thing. Those have actually fallen by 5.6% year over year. Home goods sales also fell. Department store sales fell by 2.7%. But the ones that have actually gained traction, apparel, which is somewhat surprising to me. You would figure, it is not one of the things that people normally think of when it comes to, producing at a high level. They've rose. Sporting goods sales have risen by 3.5%. And then store sales overall have risen by 3.2%. And I think from a store sales perspective, people are starting to get out there a lot more. And I think that's just, what you're starting to see. There has been a significant drop off in online sales as compared to in-store sales. And that's just a function of, things opening back up. Another thing that I thought was kind of interesting is, one of the things that you'll see, and I'm sure in other markets, this is common, like, furniture stores. There's a lot of furniture stores starting to close. The reason for it, I'd imagine, is one, furniture is very capital intensive. You need to have a lot of furniture to be able to offer to your potential clientele. And that ties up a lot of money within the business. And then you're starting to have to compete now with the IKEAs and other furniture stores that can just deliver product at a lot cheaper than the average furniture store can. So margins have begun to shrink. And, you're starting to see a lot more furniture stores and appliance stores and electronics not being able to compete. And so, one of the things they talked about in this particular article was that, those trends are probably going to continue. So you're probably going to see furniture stores continue to close. I know I've seen a couple recently that have closed. And how do you repurpose that now? It's just, the good thing about furniture stores is just a big box. So you have like 8,000 to 10,000 square feet of space that just, used to house a bunch of furniture in the middle. Whereas now, if you take that store, what can you do with it? Maybe you can create like a little strip center, right? A redevelopment, or you can, chop it up in some way or demolish and rebuild. Like, there's different ways to approach that whole process. So I found this article super interesting. And I think one of the crux of the article is that, retail is still strong. They don't know exactly what it's going to look like in 2023, but based on even the interest rate hikes we've experienced this year, retail in e-commerce and just sales overall have not slowed down too much. So
I'm kind of surprised just glancing over it. I know that they said the e-commerce rose 7.7% year over year, but I wonder if that was a factor of COVID with people staying at home and ordering, and that's what pushed the numbers higher than what normal retail was, and that's what I was.
Yeah, and the year over year growth for e-commerce is from 2021 to 2022. So from 2019 to 2020, there was a boom in online sales. So
Yeah.
it got up to like 25 or 30, I don't know how much, but it got up to significant numbers. Prior to COVID, I think total online sales were like 14 or 15%. And I think it bumped up to in excess of 25% at one point. And then now it in 2020, there was a significant drop off in e-commerce because things started to open back up. So I think one thing to consider is that, online is just going to become a bigger part of our everyday life, but there is still a strong demand for in-person retail. And at some point, you're going to reach an equilibrium point. There's going to be a moment in time in the future where online sales and in-person store sales meet an equilibrium. And there's just kind of a balancing act right there, because not everyone's going to want to buy stuff online, or there's certain things that you may or may not want to do. So,
And on another note, you were discussing that electronics, home goods, and just overall department stores fell. And I believe that had a lot to do with people being at home. They're kind of bored. Hey, they've been putting off redecorating their home. So they just went ahead and got online and ordered everything. And so that's why 2022, not that many people were buying things, because they were doing that in 2020, 2021. So that's just my take on it. I believe that is why you see that their numbers fell, unless it's a supply chain issue in electronics, but I'm not sure.
No. I think a lot of the electronics, like, people just buy online. I mean, most of the time I'm not going to go to I rarely go to Best Buy, or I really go to look at Radio Shack. Radio Shack went out of business many years ago as well. And, I think it's just a sign of the times. I really think that the new norm is that people buy these products online most of the time. I do a lot of research online, and then I look at the 3 or 4 different items I want to buy, and then I go to, eBay or Amazon or whatever to buy it. And in furniture, I think a big part of that is IKEA. I think IKEA is really, taking over. I mean, it's been there forever, but I'm just saying that, from an economics perspective, they just can't keep up with the pressuring of margins in that industry. So
Best Buy is actually redoing their floor layouts and adding different things that they haven't sold in other years, and they're taking away several departments. They used to have radio installs and stuff like that, and now they may still have it, but the section is not a full shelf or a full aisle anymore. It's definitely has shrank. So I think they are following the trends, like you said, and I think a lot of the people are companies in general, especially like Best Buy, is going to online sales. I believe that we're going to see Best Buy decrease their footprints in retail. They're going to cut it to 2/3 and then down to 1/3. And unfortunately, I think they could be on the trend of like you said, Radio Shack. But because all their sales are going to be online, they'll just have a big warehouse somewhere and distribute their sales from there.
Yeah. I think, and you actually highlighted a great point, is that, retail footprints are shrinking across the board. I mean, you're seeing it in, historically restaurants used to be a lot bigger footprint, and now you're starting to see more and more concepts that are coming out that have even a more condensed footprint. I work a decent amount with franchises, and, a lot of their footprints are like 1,000 to 1,500, maybe 2,000 square feet. And that's really focused on the pick up and go and, drive-through, if they have drive-throughs, that sort of thing. And, you're even starting to see it like, with coffee. I know scooters is a big thing out here, and it's become a big thing out here. It's not originally from Kentucky per se, but, they've definitely expanded pretty rapidly over the last several years. And literally all scooters is like, how many square feet is it? Like 400, I don't know, 500 square feet maybe. And they build them. They just like,
it's pre-manufactured building that they ship in. Yeah. So I dealt with a couple scooters. I didn't get the job, but I bid the job. They just need a site built out in a parking lot just for a drive-through. Maybe a couple of parking spaces for their employees who work inside, but it's literally a drive-through that they built. And you don't really need that much room to run that. If you ever in a Starbucks, I mean, you just literally cut out the whole front counter there into the drive-through section, and boom, you have, a coffee shop, essentially a drive-through coffee shop, no less. But I wanted to real quick jump back to other retail, Tractor Supply, Best Buy. I also have realized and seen through bid costs on the commercial construction side that they're actually growing their warehouse side of each store. So that's why their footprint on the retail side is shrinking, is because the backside is actually growing, because they want that inventory to to be at the store. So I know Tractor Supply has taken initiative in all their stores. Their retail part of it is shrinking. Like I think the most that I've seen was like 4,000 square feet, and that's becoming their warehouse essentially. They're housing more product just behind the wall. So
yeah, and
I
that's
think
and
we're gonna see that too. I think maybe that would be the first step, and then the actual whole of like retail they'll have to move out because they'll essentially turn into a full warehouse, and you can't be in a distribution center in a retail center. So
yeah.
but,
Well, they get repurposed. I mean, at some
yeah.
point, and I agree with you. And I think, that kind of lends itself back to the whole distribution of products, because last mile delivery, which is, I know, a buzzword for a lot of people, is by far the most expensive thing that retailers have to deal with online and otherwise. So, getting that product from the whatever distribution center that is at to the customer, that is by far the most expensive. So if you can have it all on site, that obviously limits the impact that may have on your bottom line. And then also from the perspective of just having that inventory ready to go for clients when they walk in, I mean that creates that convenience factor. So well, cool. So that was a good discussion on this article. So next up, we'll go ahead and go to another article. So this one is related to delivering the U.S. manufacturing renaissance. This is a McKinsey article. It's actually quite long, but it's very in depth and quite comprehensive about some of the initiatives that a lot of these the business community, because they've interviewed a bunch of different people in the business community to talk about things that they're seeing or projecting for the future, and so that's kind of highlighting this article.
If you can scroll back up to that chart, would be a good first one. Yeah. Right now, for everyone that's listening, there's a chart. It's manufacturing creates outsized economic impact in the U.S. And it has what the workforce is, the net capital stock, productivity, the GDP of manufacturing, what patents have went through to stir growth, productivity growth, exports, and then R&D spending. And what one for me that really stands out is the R&D spending, because there have been multiple laws and credits that's been in place to help grow the R&D sector of all manufacturing. And I think we're not going to see that right away, but I believe 5-10 years from now, that's really going to benefit manufacturing as a whole. Here. So I'm looking forward to see where that goes. I know the CHIPS Act was one for the semiconductors to move that back. And I believe that's what's helped Intel make the decision to open those 2 new plants up around Phoenix. And it's actually, sped up the process, and which I'm grateful for that. I know I keep going back to semiconductors, but that's just, if you think about it, if you're listening to this on a radio, if you're listening to this on a smartphone, on a laptop, however, there's the semiconductor in there somewhere. There's processing chips and everything that we're going to need. So bringing it back home is vital. So
yeah, and you mentioned the R&D. I mean, that's huge. I mean, that's how innovation takes place, and that those R&D dollars are going to go towards creating machinery and technology to refine the process to make it more affordable for us to produce domestically, and ultimately that lends itself to the consumer. So, if you're manufacturing steel, for example, I'm sure that some of these steel manufacturers are investing heavily in technology to try to refine that process. And, one of the biggest inputs for steel, one of the biggest purchasers of steel is for buildings, right? So from a commercial real estate standpoint, it's going to benefit our industry immensely, because now it's like, okay, well, hopefully the cost of producing or constructing a property or a complex or whatever becomes a lot more, in line, so.
If anybody wants to look at this, their source, the McKinsey company, is the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis and the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics is where they form this chart. So if you want to deep dive into that, that's their source. So,
and we'll include these links in the show notes as well. So if you guys are wanting to, check these out, go ahead in the show description. So if you're listening to this on Spotify, you'll see on the bottom. And if you're listening to this in an Apple podcast format, you'll see that as well. So Any other particular insights that you thought were pretty beneficial?
We can go to the if you could go back up to the next chart, that helps out a lot. This right here is just like how this next chart is an effective transformation of the U.S. manufacturing sector could boost GDP by 275 billion to 460 billion, while adding up to 1.5 million jobs. And I think that's huge. We're looking at a chart here that's it shows the different sectors, which it looks like semiconductors is the big one, a big one. And then they have other skill-based industries. That's another one in this chart here. And I just want to point out that moving these back is going to boost the GDP overall and supply jobs by moving all these back. I mean, that's just what's going to happen. There's no way around it. But I can't wait. They even said that they're showing the incremental opportunity by 2030 as well in this chart, which I believe these are opportunity statistics now that I'm looking more into it. So
yeah,
I believe that, I mean, you're looking at the additional optimistic opportunities is at 185, and then the low end opportunity is 275. So they're hoping that they get, well above 400, but they for sure are going to get right at 300 billion increase by bringing all these jobs back. So
and that's that's GDP. So GDP is gross domestic product. That's on a yearly basis. Like this is how it's going to contribute to the economy over year going forward. And this is obviously only 2030. I mean, that's right around the corner. It's not that far away.
No, not at all. Just by doing,
imagine the growth. Yeah,
it's going to be amazing to see.
Definitely
to see that.
Absolutely. Well, that's great. And like I said, this article is very comprehensive. It talks about sustainability and how they're tackling that issue. It talks about some of the digitization, I should say, of manufacturing and some of the things that they're, initiatives they're taking on from a business community standpoint. And then one of the things that's cool that I know you had mentioned is the skilled labor. I mean, it's becoming a lot more, heavy skill focused, these jobs. I mean, they're not gone are the days that you sit at a, chair and you just twist a lug nut in the process. I mean, I'm sure there's still going to be some of that going on, but that is shrinking significantly over time. Now it's machinery that is going to be handling a lot of this function. And now you as an operator has to have more skills as far as being able to work with that machine, or maybe even operate that machine to, perform a certain function. So
I think a lot of that, the skill is actually coming with the technology advancements that we're going into manufacturing finally. And so a lot of training, I think his name is Moser, and he's one of the CEOs or president of the Reshoring Acts and reshoring.org. And he was stating something like this as well, is that you're going from low skill manufacturer jobs, now it's going to mid to high skilled, because you're bringing in technology, robotics and such to help speed up the process, keep the human element involved, but give them technology, robotics to speed up the process, where now their output can be, 100-fold what they originally had. So, but they need to know all the systems and everything in place to keep that machine, robotics, etc., running properly. So that's, I think, what Raphael was going into, is that's where the skill is now coming into play because of that. So
absolutely. And that, because it's a higher skill job, now the wages, the salaries are higher. I mean, these are very high paying jobs. I mean, historically, if you were to look at manufacturing, decades and decades and decades ago, they may have not been as well paying because of the skill required. But now with these reshoring efforts, I mean, these are very, very lucrative jobs that you can get. And so, anyone who's considering a career, a lot of times this was not necessarily something people want to do, but now it's like, oh wait, you can make significant money doing, these types of, manufacturing roles. And, you could provide a great life for your family. And ultimately that's a trend that I see continuing going forward. So next up, so that was a good one. The next up is one that I found super cool. So, AI and technology, other types of technical or softwares have started to infiltrate the broader business economy. One that I saw recently, which was pretty cool, is a AI platform that helps you measure your measurements for your suits or your shirts or whatever else. And yeah. So this is actually, this technology has been adopted from my understanding. I think Men's Warehouse does or utilizes this particular technology, but the logic is that you can get these measurements done through this platform, and it's accurate within a very, very close margin. Because one of the biggest problems with online retailers in particular is that, I think it was like, let me look at exactly, but it was saying that when it comes to online purchases, 12.2% of clothing is returned, and more than half of the time that's because the items don't fit. So you think, 12.2% of all purchases, that's a significant number if you're talking millions and millions and millions of transactions. So 12.2% of all clothing is returned if it's an online purchase, and then half the time, so 6.4% or 6 and change percentage, is because it didn't fit. So if you can eliminate, that 6% delta, I mean, that's going to save you millions and millions and millions of dollars of shipping fees and lost time. And they even said here, most of the products that get returned don't get sold because they for some reason, either they're either damaged or they're out of style, because, especially in retail with apparel, fashion changes constantly. So if they can't immediately sell it thereafter, a lot of times it just doesn't get sold. So the cost to a lot of these companies is significant. And so if you can, shrink the variability when it comes to, your product fitting, then you just hopefully save yourself, millions and millions of dollars. And you gained a 6% efficiency increase as a result of you taking that on. And the company itself is called Bold Metric. I'm sure there's a lot of other companies that do something similar or are trying to fill that particular need. But I just read this article and I was like, this is so cool. I mean, this is like, the type of stuff that I find interesting. So,
well, one thing that I've taken from it is there's apps being created the same as what this is, that creates a 3D avatar for when you actually go into a store. You can try on clothing by just simply taking a photo of it while you're there, and you can see how it fits on your body by using your avatar. And there's no longer needs for dressing rooms. So imagine freeing up all the dressing rooms in a retail where they could put, product essentially. That's going to be an amazing add-on to everyone. I know Draper there was acquired by Gap, so they've been getting into it in 2021. And then there's an app called My Size ID as well that's in this article that's doing the photos. You take a photo of it and it creates basically an avatar of your body, and you get to see what it looks like when you're wearing it. I mean, the time and efficiency this is going to replace. I will think that it might take away some responsibilities of the labor force there, where they don't have to count how many articles of clothing and theft and all that. And this would actually help with the theft, because there's no longer a changing room where you can go and hide clothing. I think there's some good benefits to this. I don't see it taking away too many jobs in the near future, but I think it will help, like you said, Raphael, with the shipping, the clothing that doesn't fit and all that. And so that's going to free up. Just imagine that time that it takes to ship back a piece of article of clothing from a shipping company. Now they can spend that, actually shipping something that someone's not going to return. Take that time and use it a little bit better. So I think productivity as far as shipping goes with Amazon and UPS and FedEx and all those, it's actually going to help out. So this is a pretty neat article. I can't wait to start seeing it. I'm sure we're going to go into a store and it's going to scan your body, and then they're going to show you a 3D or just a screen, and it's going to show what you're going to look like in, that new suit that's just came out. So I don't see that being too far.
No,
In a couple of more years, I'm sure we're going to walk in and that's what's going to happen.
Absolutely. Yeah. And they create, like you said, that 3D model and everything. That's super cool.
I mean, I feel like that's coming.
It's going to.
This is like the first step. And then all they need is a huge screen when you walk in and some high def cameras. Boom, they scan you. Now you walk in and you're like, oh, wow, I look really nice in that suit. And
And
I
you could probably, at some point you could just pick, oh, let's try this
Yeah.
on. Oh, let's try this on. And you can just, oh yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, no, it's
I think
super
it's coming.
interesting. Oh, it is. Yeah, yeah. I mean, some of the technology I've saw, we went to I went to that conference in New York in 2021, and I saw some obviously more so specifically focused to commercial real estate. But some of the things that I saw was like, wow, it's really cool that you can actually do this stuff. And there's a lot of very brilliant, intelligent people that are trying to solve problems in the economy, and obviously, this particular technology is going to benefit the retail industry immensely. And how does that affect commercial real estate? Well, like you said, you may be able to shrink some footprints, because if you don't need a dressing room or whatever else, then you may be able to kind of, not necessarily have to take up so much space, and you still get the benefit of having a physical store, but maybe instead of being 3,000 square feet or 2,500 square feet, now you can take, 1,000. And, there's just a lot less wasted space, because a lot of that is going to be happening either online, or if they come in the store, then you could have that digital avatar that they can reference when they're getting dressed. So
yeah, this is going to be a pretty cool technology. I'm not all for every AI project that's out there that's taking away jobs, but this one I think is actually going to benefit humans, civilization as we know it.
Yeah, I like that. It's going to benefit humans.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think, what? I don't see on here where they have a clothing algorithm or 3D avatar for your animals. So if someone's listening to this, you're great at designing something, an app, you might want to do that, because it doesn't mention it anywhere in here. And I know a lot of people spend a lot of money on outfits for their animals. So
you're telling me, man. Melody bought a Christmas sweater for our dog a while back, and I was just like so embarrassed. I'm like, oh my gosh. It's like you're dressing our pet.
I mean,
it makes sense. It makes sense. Hey, and I'm not knocking anyone who does. It's just, I remember walking in one day last year and she was wearing this Christmas sweater, and I was like, what?
Where did you guys head into a ugly Christmas sweater party? So you got to take that.
No, she just saw the Christmas sweater, and she's like, oh, that's really cute. And so she bought it, and then she put it on her, and I just walked in. I said, okay, well, I guess she's wearing a Christmas sweater. So,
well,
so if he was,
that's smart. If
like,
you're listening to this, we have an idea. We can possibly make the app for you. Just call us.
Yeah. Well, we'll call the Bold Metrics.
We'll make this deal happen. Yeah.
We'll
make this deal happen.
We got a great idea for you. All right. I was gonna pull up your article. I don't have it. I didn't get it in the email for some reason, but we'll go ahead and just move on to this one real quick, and then we'll wrap it up. But this particular article is somewhat retail focused, in that this gentleman, Brian Wong, was one of the first Americans hired by Alibaba. Now, if you guys don't know Alibaba, it is one of the largest online companies for, distribution of products in the world. It started off as a B2B company, strictly focused on, providing, products and stuff to businesses. And now it's expanded, and there's a bunch of subsidiaries, and, now it's become, the pretty much direct competition with Amazon. And so one of the things that this article talks about is like the differences in consumer trends between the US and China, and how the adoption of digital technology, or the digitization of retail, I should say, was actually adopted a lot quicker in China than it has been over here. And so, he talks a little bit about, some of the differences between how e-commerce is conducted in China versus the US. One of the more enlightening facts is that, as I mentioned before, Alibaba started as a B2B company. And, the idea of buying things online in China at the time, earlier in the 2000s, it was just kind of like a foreign concept. It just, no one did it. It was not a very common thing. And now, as of 2021, the Singles Day in China is essentially the same as Prime Day, and the Singles Days, from a retail standpoint, is very similar. And the Singles Day revenue compared to Prime Day was, so Singles Day in 2021, which is the equivalent of, let's say, Prime Day for Amazon, was $84.5 billion, which was 7 times more than the global revenue generated by Amazon on Prime Day. It's unbelievable. I mean, the amount of money that is generated on this day is absolutely amazing. And, as it mentions in the rest of the article, like the retail sector in China the payment processing and everything is all digital now. You can order stuff digitally, which I know here is becoming more of a trend in fast food restaurants and such. That's very common over there, apparently. So again, the main gist of this article and why I found it very interesting is because it talks a lot about consumer trends and how the consumer in China operates differently than the consumer in the US or the West. And that makes a difference. I mean, retail is really psychology. How do people buy products and exchange goods? And the way that things are done in certain environments are going to be different than done in certain environments. So if you understand that as a business, you can tailor your product or your service or whatever to attract or potentially benefit from a new environment. So I found it very interesting. And yeah,
those numbers are astounding. 7 times more than Prime Day, and that's like, but I guess not being in the Eastern civilization compared to where we're in Western, we find that hard to believe. But I mean, let's face it, there are more consumers in the Eastern hemisphere than there are in the Western.
100%. Yeah.
So if you look at it like that, just like people, I think that's probably why they're getting 7 times more.
Maybe. I mean, there's 3 times more. There's 3 times more people in China than there are in US on average. I mean, it's I think it's maybe 3 to 3.5 or something like that. But
same with India.
Yeah. India. I mean, I don't know if this is true
or
not.
They're like
they're
2.5,
close.
3. Yeah.
I think
crazy.
they may no, they're I think at 1 and change, but I think they're close to eclipsing China as the largest country. I'm not sure exactly. Don't quote me on that, but they're very close. And that's
another topic there for sure.
That's a variety of reasons. Yeah. But
that's insane that they're eclipsing China with their land.
Well, no, with population.
No. I'm saying, yeah, exactly. But it goes back to like land. Where do you hold all those people? I mean India is not as large as China. I don't know.
No, it's not.
Don't quote me on this, but it's just looking. I mean, it's like half the size, and you're going to like, wow.
It's close. It's close. And don't quote me on the numbers, but it's getting there. It's very close. But yeah, I mean, I think part of it too is the rapid industrialization of China. I mean, realistically, 40 or 50 years ago, maybe a little longer than that. Let's say 50 to 60 years ago, it was a predominantly agrarian society. And then with Mao, with the Great Leap Forward, there was a big push for the industrialization of China, and in the subsequent years, they started opening up more trade with the rest of the world, and the middle class in China has grown immensely. I mean, compared to where it was 50 to 60 years ago. And so as the quality of life improves, right, and people have more disposable income, they spend money, right? People want to buy goods and services that they couldn't necessarily afford before, which they now can. And so with the expansion of the middle class in China, you're starting to see these types of trends where it's like, okay, yeah, we're getting 7 times more revenue on a particular day, which is equivalent to the Prime Day in the US than what you would see just in the United States. And you would historically think, oh, well, with the US being as affluent and prosperous as it is, that wouldn't be the case. But China's got a very large middle class that has a strong demand for product and services. So
actually, this article points out that how China is actually further along than us when it comes to technology. Because Brian Wong states here in this article that when it comes to payments, sometimes I forget to bring my wallet with me because everything now in China is done through the mobile phone. There's manless restaurants with no waiters that will come take your order. So I think, and then he also states that the QR code is omnipresent. So, I mean, everywhere you go, you can just use your phone to make purchases and all this. So I think China or the US is following that. They're going slower because I just believe that's just the consumer base that we have. But they're saying that, or Brian Wong states that everything kind of moves to the digital because they're just making it more efficient and more direct. And I think that right there just shows you where the US is going. I would be curious to see. I want to research this once we get off here, but I want to look into that with China and see how they're doing that and how their consumer is reacting to that. Is it actually more efficient, more direct, or are there still hiccups in the technology that's causing, delays and such?
Yeah, no,
Have
I
they
mean,
worked all those out? Yeah, I don't know.
There may very well be, hiccups here and there, but from an efficiency standpoint, I think it comes down to like workforce. Like if you can, just as an example with quick service restaurants, like if you can only have 2 employees on site as opposed to having 10 or 12 or 13 that have to come to tables or whatever else, like that in and of itself is an efficiency improvement because you save on, operational efficiency with wages and then reliability of employees. I mean, unfortunately, today's society, it's been very tough to find, so I think if anything, it does.
I'm very curious. I definitely want to research and how they're doing that manless restaurants because I know it's coming here. I know McDonald's is now a manless restaurant. I don't know if it's here in the US, but that's what I've read. But I'm curious to why you have your contactless things. If you walk into a fast food restaurant, they're bringing those in, so you come in and you can do the touch screen. But I'm very curious to why they don't have that in the drive-thru. I mean, somebody could easily reach their arm out and touch a screen and order food, and I feel like that would help as far as the efficiency goes. You're getting exactly what you wanted. You're typing it on the screen, and
and especially if you can use your phone to pay right there.
Oh yeah.
So if you could just literally click, oh, I want this, this, and this, and then you just scan your phone, or you have Apple Pay and you just hover over it and you pay for it, then that would make it super easy because then you don't need a cashier sitting there taking your order and whatever else. Then that becomes less of a bottleneck, and now you can maybe relocate them back of house to produce more. But again, I think that goes to what you had talked about earlier about our consumers, right? Some people. I mean, again, a lot of people here like to have that personal, attention, the concept of having, just it being digital all the time. In particular, generationally, it's different, right? So in our generation, maybe we're a little bit more receptive to that than maybe an older generation would be. So again, I think it's a trending in that direction for sure. I mean, there's no doubt about that at all. But who knows when that actually manifests itself?
Yeah, I definitely, like, once we get done with this podcast, I'm going to research that. I'm just curious to see how far along that is. I know if any of the younger in the commercial industry, I think if you want to get into researching and get into a new sector that's going to be coming out in robotics, finding companies who do robotics and being able to house them and find their warehouses and production and all that. I think that could be something that's coming down the pike, especially here in the US. So I'd love to talk to someone out there if you're listening and you have dealt with that, robotics companies in the commercial sector. I would love to get you on the podcast and discuss more into this. So
no, I mean, I think I'm glad we were able to do this. Like I said, this was our first attempt at this, and I think it went great. I think we had a great discussion about some very prevalent topics and important topics in the commercial real estate landscape, really the business and economic landscape that now also affects commercial real estate. And so we're looking forward to doing more of these in the future. And we'd like to hear your guys' thoughts. If you guys have any articles or anything you'd like us to touch on during these discussions, we would obviously greatly appreciate you guys reaching out and sharing that, because Jeff and I love this type of stuff. So, we'd be happy to, research a little bit on it and then talk about it like we have just now. So definitely consider us.
This is, I believe it's like a year-end episode here. And I just wanted to say, and I know Raphael is going to back me up on this, just thank you for all the guests, especially you listeners. Our growth has been exponential this year. It's been a great year. We're very appreciative of all the support, and you guys sharing the podcast, that's very much helped. And doing the 5-star reviews, that's just, I mean, the growth, Raphael could probably tell you the stats on that, but it's been like a rocket this year, and I know we're both grateful for it. So we appreciate that you're helping.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, we wouldn't be here without you guys and your consistent, listening in and supporting our podcast. I mean, it is a lot of work putting these things together and distributing them and making sure that, we produce at a high quality. And so the fact that you guys are continuing to engage and reflect with the podcast is just awesome. So continue to do that. Obviously we wish you guys a great year next year, or this coming year, I should say. By the time we push this live, it will be the new year. So, we do wish you the very best in 2023. If you guys are watching this on YouTube, obviously we would greatly appreciate if you could like and subscribe to this channel. It really helps with the YouTube algorithm and ensures more and more people can hear this message. Along with that, if you guys are listening to this in a podcast format, please leave us a 5-star review. It makes the world of difference in our ability to reach a broader audience. And consider sharing this episode with someone you think would be of interest to, or someone who would gain value from it. So again, thank you all so much for stopping by, and we'll see you all next time.